Performing Porter's 5 Forces analysis. Porter's 5 forces are the characteristics of an industry environment that have the greatest impact on the performance of the firms in that industry. The fundamental mistake that the students and most other people make when analyzing these forces is that they analyze them from the perspective of an individual firm. For example, they might say, the bargaining power of suppliers for PepsiCo is low because PepsiCo has many suppliers. This is incorrect. A correct version of the statement would start, the bargaining power of suppliers in the non-alcoholic beverage industry is low because. Porter's 5 forces are like the weather. The weather on a campus is the same for every person on campus. However, different people make different decisions to deal with the weather. Long sleeve versus short sleeves, carry an umbrella versus wear a raincoat, etc. In a similar way, although Porter's 5 forces are the same for every firm in that industry, different firms make different strategic decisions to equip themselves against those forces. Some firms might source from multiple suppliers to reduce supplier power or sign customers to exclusive long-term contracts to reduce buyer power. When performing Porter's 5 forces analysis on behalf of a single firm, each force must first be analyzed from the perspective of the entire industry before any discussion or analysis of how that firm is equipped to deal with that force. For example, one could say, the bargaining power of buyers in the non-alcoholic beverage industry is fairly strong due to purchase volume and backward integration. However, PepsiCo's brand image and loyal customer base mitigate this power somewhat. To perform Porter's 5 forces analysis, identify the most relevant factors for each force and identify the direction and magnitude of the impact of those forces. If most of the impact indicates a strong force, identify the force as strong. If most of the impact indicates a weak force, identify the force as weak. If the main factors balance each other out, then identify the force as moderate. Here are a few force-specific notes to keep in mind. Threat of new entrants. To assess the threat of new entrants, you must identify the strength of barriers to entry. If you do not discuss barriers to entry, then you are not properly addressing this threat. If you identify the threat of entrance as low, but there are several recent clear examples of successful entrants, you are probably doing it incorrectly and need to reassess. Remember that high barriers to entry means low threat of new entrants and vice versa. In Porter's 5 forces analysis, suppliers are firms that sell inputs to an industry. Suppliers do not sell directly to buyers unless suppliers are forward integrated or buyers are backwards integrated. To assess supplier bargaining power, you need to identify the most important suppliers first. Then you can assess questions of the relative number of suppliers versus number of firms in the industry, differentiation among suppliers, forward integration by suppliers, or backwards integrations by industry firms, etc. In Porter's 5 forces analysis, buyers are direct consumers that buy products or service from an industry. Suppliers do not sell directly to buyers unless suppliers are forward integrated or buyers are backward integrated. To assess buyer bargaining power, you need to identify the most important buyers first. The first mistake that most analysts make is only looking at consumers. Consumers are very often not the buyers that should be analyzed. For example, PepsiCo above. Consumers do not buy directly from PepsiCo or any other non-alcoholic beverage manufacturer. So, an analysis that looked at buyer bargaining power of consumers in this industry would be extremely flawed. The second biggest mistake made in analyzing this force is overemphasis of switching costs. While switching costs are relevant, the relative number of buyers compared to the number of firms in the industry and the volume of purchase by the average buyer are by far most important factors in determining buyer bargaining power. For example, in many retail industries, there are thousands or even millions of buyers, each making a relatively small number of purchases each year. Retail consumers rarely have any power. In Porter's 5-force analysis, substitutes refer to products or services sold by firms outside of the industry that consumers could choose instead of products or services sold by the industry. Substitutes for the non-alcoholic beverage industry include tap water or alcoholic beverages. For example, not different options for non-alcoholic beverages you would find at convenience stores or supermarkets. In Porter's 5 Forces analysis, rivalry refers to the intensity with which firms have to compete with each other for customers. Most students make the mistake of claiming that every industry has strong rivalry. This is obviously not the case, or it would be pointless to discuss this force at all. The number of competitors and how easy or difficult it is for them to differentiate themselves are in the main factors in this force. More differentiation and brand loyalty, which follows, means lower rivalry. The other most important factors is industry growth. If the industry is growing rapidly, this lowers rivalry because the firms in the industry can grow profits without taking market share from competitors.